Sheryl, are you still with us?
I am back now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, I think I have better service here, but I don't have my key to get back in the building. So again, just was talking a little bit about how tech has been a tool to really help share information for organizers, for others. So it's a really amazing tool in that regard. But we also have to realize that there still is very much a digital divide. So when we think about and talk about the school district being able to pass out laptops to young people, but there are still certain neighborhoods and certain communities that actually have, much like I'm experiencing here where I am today, they don't have great Wi-Fi service. So it doesn't matter that we were able to give computers out to some young people if they have spotty Wi-Fi, or what we found in some instances where people were sharing one device in a household. And that means that if I need to be online and you need to be online, then we may not be able to all be online at the same time, and we can't all do our work at the same time. So I think some of what we've been trying to work on and trying to build around is, what does it look like for us to actually be accountable, but in a larger way, to make sure that everyone has the access. That's why programs like TeenTechSF are so important, because how do we make sure that young people not only have access to devices and that they not only have access to Wi-Fi, but they also understand and have the ability to take advantage of the devices and things that they have. So one of the things that we've been working on, and I'll share with you just in terms of since COVID-19 hit, in terms of the Human Rights Commission, some of the things that we've been working on. These are all the things that were launched in the last 2 months, really focused on addressing the gaps and the issues and the challenges. And technology has been a real huge help in that. We have been able to actually do weekly webinars. We've done a Spanish language webinar that happens every Tuesday. We do an African American faith-based webinar on Thursdays. And what we found is a lot of the older African American faith-based leaders were not able to actually access or understand how to use some of the webinars. And so that's where even young people like you could come in and be helpful to teach them how to use and move through those things. You talked about the UCSF study, and the Latino task force was a large part of that work. We were grateful to be able to partner with them. They recently launched a website that's in multiple Spanish languages and reaching a diverse group of folks. Supervisor Walton launched, along with Mayor Breed, a family relief fund that we've been able to support and work with, that is focused on getting resources to specifically some of the families in the mission that may not have the resources and that may have been worried about the impact of losing their job on the testing and being tested positive for COVID-19. So the other piece around the school district and equity, it's amazing for us during this time to really think about, and I want to give a shout out to all the amazing seniors who are graduating or who have graduated. It's a really challenging time to be a senior and to be graduating from high school and preparing to move forward. I can only imagine the pain of losing out on some of the things that are so traditional for high school, but at the same time, the time lost with your friends. And so many people, I see you have Masks for All talking later. I think it's so important that we think about our skills and our gifts and our talents and our abilities and how we use them to make a difference and to make an impact in the lives of others. And so we have been really focused at the HRC on doing some of that work. The equity studies piece is, I think, the most challenging, because when we talk about access to not just devices and not just Wi-Fi, but also the skill set and the capacity to do that, we had a lot of people that were relying on the adults in their home to help them, and the resources that the school sent home maybe were in English and the adult maybe didn't speak English. So that was a challenge, especially for our younger students who are just in the beginning stages of learning how to read. One of the things that we really had to focus on this year in terms of that as well is opportunities for all. The ability to take that program and make it work online. And so we have launched that and are working with a bunch of different partners and have been fortunate to receive support from LinkedIn and Facebook and Google. We're planning out some weekly webinars and workshops with those tech companies, as well as many of our nonprofit partners, to be able to really think about what does it look like to have the ability to still build skills, to still build your social capital and build your networks and build relationships that will help you as you advance and move forward. So Opportunities for All was taking applications. We initially had over 1,700 applicants in that first run of that. People are still welcome to apply to opsforallsf.org. If you go there, you can get the application. We're currently doing a wait list, but we plan to open that back up once we go through the process of onboarding the people that have already applied and registered for the program. That was a process that we really started in the spring when school was first stopped, when shelter in place was first put in place. We started to use the Google Classrooms in order to be able to practice going through that process and getting people onboarded and having people understand what it takes to process your work or to do project-based learning. So this year, Opportunities for All will really be focused on project-based learning, working with young people to do research, to do some review of practices and policies, and then making recommendations on how we can improve them. One of which would be addressing the digital divide. Another would be educational equity, because we do know many of the same groups that are disproportionately impacted by the coronavirus will also be, and have also been before the coronavirus, disproportionately impacted by poverty, by the achievement gap, by health disparities. So we really want to make sure that we are addressing that and remembering that as we do this work. I'm just going to type the link in again for those who have asked for it. So, there's a lot of work to being able to do that, as you all have known, but the other stressor is that it's really hard for people to spend a lot of time staring at the computer and having that engagement. So we're also trying to think about what it looks like to have the ability to do some things that are offline, even if it's not face-to-face, person-to-person. So we're still developing that. And so lastly, I would just say, one of the biggest challenges right now is addressing the racial tension that's happening in this country, coupled with the pandemic. And unfortunately, many of the same people who were negatively impacted by the pandemic are the same people that were and are and continue to be negatively impacted by the racial tension and racism. So we are really, really going to have to figure out how we come together, how we support each other, how we make a difference, and how we are not just caught up in the moment, but in this for the long haul, for the long term, to make a difference, to make things better, not just for ourselves and our communities, but for our neighboring communities, for our friends, for our classmates, and for our city. And so I am just really grateful for all of you who are staying busy, being involved in this work, and doing this work. Julie, with regards to Airbnb, Airbnb is one of those companies that has been really hit hard by the pandemic and the inability of folks to travel at the rate that they were pre the pandemic. And so we're still exploring what that relationship will look like with them, but we still have quite a few partners that we're building out and excited about working with. So I'm just grateful again for the opportunity to share with you all just a little bit. And again, congratulations to the graduating class of 2020. So many wonderful things ahead of you, and I'm sure you're going to do amazing things in your future.
Thank you so much, Sheryl, for your keynote. I think I could speak for everyone when I say that that was really informational. Thank you for that. So we do have a few questions here. So let's start off with how have you seen students grow through Ops for All?
What I hear from the students directly in terms of their growth is they feel more confident, especially engaging with adults in the workplace. They feel like they've gained additional skill sets um, and that they are improving on their work. So I think that the main thing is confidence, their social networks that they are able to build and work with folks, and that they are developing confidence that they didn't have before.
Another question is, how is the city supporting people affected by the xenophobia that has come with coronavirus?
So part of our regular webinars have been focused on addressing the bias and the xenophobia. We have also been working very closely with community stakeholders who we think can lift that voice better than outsiders. And there are quite a few programs that have launched. Specifically, I would encourage people to check out Chinese for Affirmative Action. They've been doing a lot of workshops and webinars, and we are partnering and trying to follow their lead in that work. But at the same time, we have a couple of webinars next week to talk about racism and bias and how to be an accomplice, how to be an ally.
Thanks. And our next question is, how can TeenTechSF specifically help during this time?
Well, I think, one of the things that I would suggest is to think about what skills you all have and how you can bring those to bear and support folks. So holding workshops for other students about ways to do things online, holding kind of tutorials for folks that may not know how to use Zoom, that may not know how to use Google Classrooms. But then at the same time, one of the things that we've been really needing for a lot of the families and younger students are just people reading aloud online or going through and doing activities or showing someone how to do simple coding. So even if you're making YouTube videos that can be links that can be shared out, I think it would be really helpful.
Yeah, and our next question is, what can students specifically do to support equity in San Francisco or beyond in their community?
I mean, I think that it's really important, a lot of what's already being done by young people, this idea of elevating and amplifying your voice and being prepared. I think the number one thing to do is be prepared to be the change that you want to see, because you all will be holding those jobs. You will be the leaders of the future. And just remember this moment. Don't get so caught up in the system that you forget that you wanted to disrupt the system. I think nobody goes in thinking that they want to advance racist or xenophobic policies, but some kind of way they continue to grow and manifest. And so we have to remember, don't lose touch with your young selves and your young intentions and values and get caught up in the system and status quo. I think the number one thing is to keep pushing and to keep challenging business as usual.
Yeah, so our next question is, what tools will you carry on when shelter in place is over?
So for sure, the couple of things that we've learned, I was on a call last night where someone said, we've got 85 people participating in this conversation, sharing ideas. That probably would not have happened if we had required everybody to be in person for that meeting. So we're going to keep thinking about what does it look like to have online access, to have the ability to merge visual with cellular or with telephones so that people can still continue to join in. That's one thing. Another thing that we had launched were these caravans where we were driving through different communities and different neighborhoods just to share face coverings and gloves and hand sanitizer and checking on people. And we found in a lot of those communities that people felt invisible, and they were just grateful for somebody to even just drive by and wave. And so we want to make sure that when we come out of this, we don't disconnect from the people that already felt left behind. So that's another tool and strategy that we're going to continue to do. So our webinars are driving through community, and even, believe it or not, wellness checks, just calling on people to see how they're doing, old and young and everything in between, has made a huge difference for people's mental health. But I think that moving forward, it will continue to be a really helpful, useful tool on the other side.
Our next question is, are there any resources that you would like to share with students?
So, the main thing I would see, and I see they put the correct link up for opsforall.sf.org. So I would say check out that link, but then we are really working hard to make sure that we understand what people need and that we provide resources accordingly. So continue to, again, be advocates in your role at the Youth Commission, right? Like asking people to share information and amplifying that in order to really make a difference and make an impact. Like, we have to be able to collect that information, because I can come up with ideas and strategies, but it will not be helpful and useful if it doesn't meet the actual need. And then I just see the comment around the program. The program actually serves people who live, go to school, or work in San Francisco. So, we understand that a lot of folks have been pushed out and don't have the ability to continue to live in San Francisco. And so there is some wiggle room with how we move that and how we move that forward. So if a parent or somebody works in San Francisco that's connected to the young person, they can still apply and be a part of the program. It's not limited to residents of San Francisco.
Absolutely. And we're going to wrap this up, but I think that one last question is, I guess, like, what do you hope that our city learns from COVID-19, and how do you hope San Francisco moves forward from this?
I think there are two things that I hope. One is that the sense of urgency to address disparities does not go away. I think we've heard a lot from people in the Mission, as well as people in the Bayview, Hunters Point, and Sunnydale, the OMI, the Tenderloin, the SOMA, that they wish that the city had the same sense of urgency before the pandemic, because if we had, fewer people maybe would have contracted the virus of those vulnerable populations. So I think we have to continue to believe that there's a sense of urgency and be very intentional about addressing the harm that that poverty and racism and all these other pieces were addressed. And then the other one would be collaboration. The way that the city has come together across the city, across city departments, across neighborhoods is critical for us to be able to continue to advance this work and to not be pointing the finger at each other and not be blaming each other. So those are two things that I hope will happen, that when we come out on the other side, that we are still collaborative, that we are focusing on the disparities that exist in this city and challenging that we have to take our time to address them, but that we move with a sense of urgency.
Yeah, and lastly, I just got one question asking how students here can be able to contact you, like your email.
Yeah, so I will so the best way to follow up and try to see how to be involved with some of the work and share your ideas is through HRC Roundtable at sfgov.org. And so if people were to email there, then we will follow up there. We are having a lot of roundtable discussions throughout the community and with different focuses, and definitely would love and welcome the opportunity to engage the members of TeenTechSF in our youth council work and in our work to advance issues facing young people and building the divide between tech and the city.
All right, so I think that's it for our keynote and Q&A. Thank you so much, Sheryl, for being here your work is so, so important to advancing equity here in San Francisco. So thank you so, so much for just being here and sharing what you're doing in San Francisco and sharing a lot of wisdom. I really appreciate
No, my pleasure. Thank you all so much for your work and tenacity to keep moving forward even through all of these times. Thank you. Have a good day.